Thank you for auditing the Always Positive New Music Review Show, where I'm going to tell you, at the end of this video, the truth about Dijon mustard. Now, I bring that up because I'm going to be reviewing the artist named Dijon and their album Absolutely. And I need to tell you, I'm overwhelmed, okay? I mean, I'm going to be giving a talk next week, an invited lecture at Harvard. Actually, 2 talks. I'm nervous about that. I got a whole bunch of stuff going on in my job here as a professor of French. I got exams to grade, exams to administer, all that stuff. And then on top of that, there's all of this great music that keeps coming out. I made this meme, I put it on my Instagram. It's the New Music Review Factory. And you see me there as Charlie Chaplin. I just finished Makami, now I got to do Dijon. I'm probably going to miss Snail Mail. What about Johnny Greenwood and Taylor Swift and Idols and A$AP Rock? And there's so much happening now that I just have to choose. There's going to be some things on that conveyor belt that just go past me. But it's less than 24 hours since I released my last video. That's how good this album by Dijon is. I absolutely needed to review it. I listened to it a couple times. A bunch of you suggested that I review it. Please feel free to comment if that was you, saying, we did it. Because this album is so good, it demands to be listened to. It demands to be loved. It's going to box out everything else. It's going to take up my office hours here. It's funny because one of the albums I reviewed this week was by Parcels, the Australian artisanal disco band. And I think we could say that there's a lot of similarities between Dijon and Parcels. I mean, there's a lot of superficial differences, okay? I mean, one makes very well-crafted, perfectly produced, shiny, glossy disco. The other makes this kind of raw, bedroom, lo-fi, R&B rock, right? One's from Australia, and Dijon's from Baltimore and works in LA. But they both go to prove one of the things I tried to prove to myself when I started this channel 2.5 years ago. There's good music out there. 3.5 years ago, Jesus. There's good music out there. Even though I'm in my 40s, I can still discover music being made by people in their 20s that is as good as anything that was being made when I was in my 20s. This album has that power. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Listen to both of those albums and just put them next to each other and tell me rock and roll is dead. Music is dead. It's all a bunch of people with their blips and bloops on a computer. That's really not what it is. This album is just gorgeous. It's sort of like a lo-fi rock album mixed with a bedroom pop album. It's soul, it's R&B, it's raw, it's beautiful. It's got one of the best voices I've heard this year. I think only James Blake has managed to move me. James Blake and Shelley have managed to move me in a similar way this year with their voice. And I'm going to make a comparison. And this is why I had to make the video. I want to compare this multi-instrumentalist R&B singer with an amazing voice, great songcraft and charisma to a great genius from Minnesota. Okay, multi-instrumentalist, R&B singer, charisma. I'm, of course, talking about Bob Dylan. You thought I was going to say Prince. There's a lot of Prince in here as well. I wanted to come on here because I was listening to the album today, driving into work. I mean, Kanye has a new interview out. And I'm not listening to the Kanye interview. I'm listening to this album. That's how good this album is. And while I was listening, I just kept saying, I know it's crazy. I know it's crazy. But this is Planet Waves for 2021. This feels like Bob Dylan and the band. It has that room mic group of people together making great songs with a looseness and an atmosphere everywhere, atmosphere. You are in it. You are in the room with these people making this great music. I was coming on here and I was all set to blow your mind with this comparison that could never be made by anybody than Mr. Genius Professor Skye. And then while I was proctoring my exam in French 112, Chapter 7 exam, I was reading the lyrics on Genius. Sometimes lyrics are a little bit swallowed. Do you know what he says in one of his songs? I was listening to the band by the bed. So on the one hand, I'm a little bit disappointed because my radical take on Dijon is not as radical as I thought. On the other hand, talk about feeling justified. Sorry, that's my show notes creeping into the frame there. I apologize. I have kind of a rough setup here in my office. Hey, stop it. So I'm gonna have to move the camera back so that gravity works with me. Okay. It was justification that what I heard wasn't just me trying to draw these things together. If you love 70s Bob Dylan, you know, my favorite era, Planet Waves is probably my favorite Bob Dylan album, that era, that 70s loose band going together. Lyrics are good but not too precious. That is what this album is. You want further proof? Listen to my stamp. I'm going to put a link to it up here, big mics. I'm actually not going to give you the studio version. I'm going to give you the live version, which I think is one of the best live performances I've seen this year. The live performance happens in the room where they recorded the album. It starts off with just one of the guitar players, then goes over to Dijon, the singer, until eventually it goes back and you see everybody playing inside this room. That feeling that you have like you're at Big Pink, that feeling that you have of being with a bunch of great artists who are together, having a couple beers, working together, that is what is in the album. But you can actually see it being made in the video as well. I think we need to emphasize the fact that a lot of the best albums that have ever been made rely so much on atmosphere. Sometimes they don't, right? Some albums feel as though they were just made in a perfectly made center, you know, I don't know, Random Access Memories by Daft Punk or Pet Sounds, right? Like the feeling of like it's just made, you know, it's made in some kind of perfect environment where the artistic vision can come through as crisp as a new felt marker, you know. But other albums, some of my favorite albums, are drenched in atmosphere. You feel the place. One of my top 5 albums, Tonight's the Night by Neil Young, feels like a 4 a.m. recording session. Exile on Main Street by the Stones feels like that chateau. The albums with the band and Bob Dylan feel like Big Pink. That roughness, that collaboration, that sense of experimentation and comfort and joy. And a goddamn room mic. Room mics are very underrated. You have to be a good singer to pull off a room mic. Just put a mic over there and just start singing. It helps you to feel like you're in there. So when you get this song going and he starts singing and the guitar's whining and there's a lap guitar and there's this great bass. On the studio version, Dijon plays a lot of the instruments himself, apparently bass, clarinet, drums, organ, piano. But as it's going around here, all these little production details, all these musicians adding little things where they can, a little tiny piano note, and all the way through this voice, this insanely strong voice. It's hard, unless you've already watched it, which, God damn it, why are you not watching this? Why are you watching me? You could be watching this guy stomping around the room. That's not really how he sings. I like when you're mad. But it is an amazing performance, and an amazing representation of how this whole album feels. The lyrics themselves are kind of sweet and nice. I like it when you're mad. I like how you look when you got questions. I like how you look when you got stressed. Just these kind of sweet love songs. A lot of the album seems to be about kind of a breakup or a thought, but really the words are an excuse for the voice. The next song, Scratching, he gets a little closer to the microphone. The vocal production on here actually reminds me a lot of Bon Iver, this sort of Bon Iver, with the sort of like vocal production, sort of adding a whole bed of voices underneath as you get towards the end of a line. The chorus reminds me a fair amount of Bruce Springsteen, who I hear a fair amount on this album. And he just harmonizes with himself very beautifully. There's a raggedy old piano. Again, this sense of the atmosphere, that the piano's over there and the singer's over there and they're playing, and you're just there. You're there in this apartment. In some ways, it also, I think, you could compare this with Bo Burnham's Inside as well, just as the sense of like a very LA house, a very LA room, just the creativity and the ambition and the claustrophobia of Los Angeles, this very horizontal city that can be very, very, very claustrophobic. You kind of get that joy of creativity. I don't know. But in the song Scratching, he also has this, I don't know if it's intentional, but the way he pronounces smoking, he has kind of a Kendrick Lamar pronunciation. I don't know if that's influenced from living in LA. And then just these great blown out drums. The way the drums are produced on this whole album is so great. They're often very raw. They sound sort of intentionally bad. And his singing at times sounds a lot like that other great genius from Minnesota. Sounds a lot like Prince as well. Many times, I was talking about the great drum sounds here, these ridiculously clipped and crunched drums just driving the song forward completely. I think there's even a mistake. I think there's a mistake, and that was left in there on purpose. One of my favorite moments in any Neil Young song, I even forget the name of the song, it was off of Broken Arrow. There's a part where the drummer, Ralph Molina, goes into the chorus a measure too early, so he starts playing the ride instead of the hi-hat, and just leaving that in just gives you that that feeling of being there. There's great lo-fi, I guess baritone guitar is what they call it. What is a baritone guitar? Is that a thing? That's how much I'm not, Rick Beato up in this piece. I don't even know if a baritone guitar is a real thing. Can you tell me in the comments? After you smash the like bucket, after you subscribe, after you don't hit notifications, because that's annoying. I release like 4 videos a week these days. It's crazy. Just great drums all the way through. Kind of cool casual chorus. I don't really want to talk about it so many times. You hurt me so much. Again, the singing in this reminds me a fair amount of Prince. I don't know why I keep going back. It's a feeling. This album's hard to review. Someone commented on my ABBA review that I was using my head and I have to listen with my heart because ABBA is no brains and all heart. First of all, it's an insult to any artist. But I am very much in my head. This album's a very emotional album. Like Tonight's the Night, like Planet Waves, it's kind of hard to describe how great it is when what's so great is this atmosphere. A great example, though, of what makes it nice is the super piano, like this piano solo at the end is just kind of thrown in there out of nowhere. Next song is called Annie, where those same drums that were there before are led awkwardly into this song where it slows down. Kind of a deep soul voice over basically a rock track. The chorus has many, many voices. This was when I was listening to it the first time, this was the initial time where in my notes I wrote, reminds me of the band. Again, I thought like, oh, Skye, how are you going to explain this? How are you going to justify this blistering hot take? Very nice loose feel. There's this, it plays a lot with dynamics in this song and all the way throughout the album, like where there's lots of voices and the voices drop out. And then there's this drum fill. I wrote down the name of the drummer, Michael Gordon. Great, great drummer. Okay. I'm not saying Levon Helm, but in that sort of like expressive, deliberate looseness to the drumming, not sloppy, but loose. This great drum fill leads into a final verse with way more vocals, and the lyrics all the whole time, you can change your mind, Annie. Does kind of the Bob Dylan thing of just throwing around people's names. And just you're sort of like, wow, you sure know a lot of people. A lot of people, you have a lot of things to say about a lot of people. Next song's called Noah Highlight Reel. Total, like, it sounds so much like a band, the band, guitar opening, just kind of a sweet and warm song. I guess Dijon's playing guitar and clarinet. I guess this guy Noah is just talking. It's a song that doesn't quite get started, but it's filled with the studio ambiance. And the studio ambiance is sort of, he has a lot of collaborators, but I'd say the collaborators are equally important for the atmosphere they set as for the actual musical contributions. Again, going back to the Bo Burnham thing, I'm just riffing here. It's on my notes. I don't have a script, I have notes. This is sort of the antithesis of Inside in a way, because this is the same kind of space, an LA apartment, but it's all collaboration, it's all together. As opposed to being insular and thinking and not being able to get out of your own mind, this is very much getting out of there. Next song is called The Dress. Total vibe change. Now it's an 80s R&B song. Like a drum machine that seems to be programmed by Dijon, 80s style soft rock and sweet synthesizers, kind of a post-breakup song, We Should Go Out and Dance Like We Used To. Again, great like production details, like a little hint of this like lap guitar at a certain point. Next song, God and Wilson. This is where, the most fun I had listening to this album was listening in the car on the way to work, when I could have been listening to the Kanye interview. Do you know how excited I am to listen to part 2 of the Kanye interview? But then I listened to it in headphones while I was proctoring the exam, and it's like a different song. Just the richness that you get in the production here. It's very kind of near, very intimate, a little bit less of the sort of room mic feeling, a little bit more of an intimate feeling. Very strong acoustic guitar all the way through, these swirling sounds, kind of like 70s style gospel rock backup singers, more blown out drums, and then just an interesting sort of love verse. And Helen is a good dancer. She can move like she's hexed. I like to watch her spin round and round, sweat dripping down her neck, and I do quite like imagining things sometimes. So it's like a weird sort of sexual fantasy verse that's oddly innocent and sweet. And then the next line is the sort of turn that he's able to do with his lyrics. When I heard a tale of the good Lord gives and takes, he speaks and fires and earthquakes. Interesting concept. Many times, oh, I've already talked about many times. See, I have notes, but they're two-sided, so I flip them over. Sometimes I forget that I flip them over. There's certain things I say almost every episode. I don't have a script, I have notes. The other one is I don't edit. Gonna keep that in there. Did you see it? Maybe a low point on the album, although I do like it. It's that kind of lap guitar, pedal steel sound. It seems like it's sort of a drug song, like do you feel the cap setting in? But it's not much of a song. It's almost like an interlude that ends with this like clipping sound that then leads into Talk Down, which is a totally different vibe altogether. Has a standard, I believe, James Brown drum break, like one of the most common drum breaks in the history of hip-hop, but it's just used in the back for this pop song. This is the one where he references listening to the band and Liz Phair, and he sort of listing off all these bands that he's listening to. And then there's a beat change without him singing changing. So a different standard hip-hop drum break loop goes underneath. And the whole song is just this interesting idea of like turn the radio down, I like it when you talk down. Rodeo Clown, I think is the most interesting lyrically. Musically, it's got this great just guitar and voice. His voice is just so powerful and so spiritual. This song was almost my stamp, because the way he sings the following words, "You are missing out," is a transcendent experience which you need to experience. Okay? Like, seriously, like, I'm still listening to that James Blake album, and there are times where he sings things, and I just go, ah, you know? Like, ah, you know? It's just so beautiful. The way Dijon sings "You Are Missing Out" has this strength and vulnerability that is like a combination of technical mastery and something you can't teach, okay? That's when art is at its best. Like absolute mastery, you know, hitting the right notes, hitting the right tones, vocal control, breathing control, but then he has this soul to it, this vulnerability, this breaking quality. And then after he sings that, the rest of the song is in this beautiful, pathetic tone. My daughter was sort of laughing that he sounds bad and that he just sounds like he's like a nervous teenager. But I think this was affect on her part. And by the end, we were both kind of like, wow, this guy can sing. I don't know how he can sound so unhinged and so in control of his voice at the same time. This is all matched to the idea of him being like a rodeo clown. It's kind of an interesting metaphor of the artist as a rodeo clown, like put your face on. And there's these great kind of sloppy claps at the end. And then like the end of the song is like replaced by the studio people saying it. It's like really meaningful song about I'll love you forever and ever, or I love you to the moon. And it leads to the song End of Record, which is not the last song of the album, where the sounds of people eating is louder than anything else in the song. And just this great minimal guitar and like bass chords being played. We're kind of like winding up this album. The eating feels intentional. It feels like we've all been together and we've been hanging around listening to this music, playing music long enough. Let's have a bite to eat. The song Credits is not a credits. He doesn't say who's playing, but it's kind of a very Bruce Springsteen-y anthemic song, kind of singing like Bruce, Would You Freak Out With Us? And it's a nice, interesting ending to this just devastatingly good album. It's very exciting and very good. So I told you I'd tell you the truth about Dijon mustard. The Champagne region of France is famous for champagne. Now, you may or may not know this about me. I hate champagne. It gives me a headache. I don't think it tastes good. I respect it, okay? The thing about, in France, food is geographical, okay? That's why only Champagne can only come from the Champagne region of France, right? If you have sparkling wine from California, you can't call it Champagne. You can call it sparkling wine. So Dijon is in that same region, and it's a city, a beautiful city. And I went there, and I went mustard tasting, thinking I had had Dijon mustard before. Here's the problem. I hadn't. You have not had Dijon mustard. Don't look at the camera. Don't say, oh, but I went to Trader Joe's and I got the Dijon mustard there. That's great. The Dijon mustard at Trader Joe's is the best Dijon mustard you can get in America, and it's $2. Great. That's not Dijon mustard. Oh, I had the stone ground stuff. No. Oh, I got the stuff from French Canada. No. As far as I know, there's nowhere in America to get real Dijon mustard. The difference is this. The primary ingredient is not vinegar. It's white wine. When you eat, and you can go to the, Mai is the most famous maker of Dijon mustard. They sell mustard in America. It's not the real stuff. They sell it in Canada. It's not the real stuff. They sell it in France. It's not the real stuff. You have to go to the factory store in Dijon of Mai, and they will let you taste the real stuff. And it is so tasty, so rich and flavorful that you have to stop yourself from just taking a spoon and just, that is how good. So you want to go to France? Great. You know, often people tell me, oh, I'm going to Europe for 2 weeks. I'm going to France for 1 week and England for another. Do you have any suggestions? Yeah, I have a suggestion. Don't go to England. Stay in France longer. Do things like that. Go to Dijon and have the best mustard you've ever had, so that for the rest of your life, when people say, do you like mustard? You say, I like mustard, but I've had Dijon. That has nothing to do with the singer, but I can't help it. All right, well, until next time. Oh, I was looking at the clock to see what time it was, to see how much time I had before my next class. Oh, good, I have a couple minutes. I had nothing else to say. So there you go. Oh, you can tell me in the comments, did you listen to this album? Did you like it as much as I did? Is there something you thought I missed? And all the people on here who I haven't reviewed yet, who do you think I should get to? You know, Johnny Greenwood, Snail Mail, Taylor Swift, A$AP Rock, Courtney Barnett, Idols. You know, I have an idea of who I'm going to get to, but I've got that invited lecture to give on Thursday at Harvard, like for real. So I'm busy. All right, until next time, there's the camera.